It's the 1980s and you're finally out of elementary school and moving on up to the big leagues. Middle school. It's exciting, but you also begin to realize just how much paper, school supplies, and books you now have to organize and keep track of. What was a kid to do? Well, luckily the folks over at Mead sure knew when they came up with an invention that would revolutionize school and homework for students all across North America. And with that, my name is Bats, and I'll be your guide today as we explore this School of Boredom Quickie with Trapper Keeper. Organizing can be fun. Although the Trapper Keeper was really popular in the 1980s and 1990s, you may not know it was actually invented in the late 1970s by Bryant Crutchfield, director of ventures at the Mead Corporation. He wanted to make a notebook that would hold portfolios that students could take to all 6 classes. Now, most kids and parents of the 1980s and 1990s were already pretty familiar with the Mead brand, as they had already come out with lots of school supplies, including the Trapper folder.
Got a button here, Bats, with a little more info for our viewers. A Trapper brand folder was a pocket folder that had 3 sides, closed with the top open to put your papers in.
Right you are, goats. These nifty little folders ensured that your papers wouldn't fall out easily, which turned out to be a big help to younger kids. Because the new binder featured several of these Trapper folders, Mead decided to name their binder the Trapper Keeper. Most 3-ring binders back then had metal rings. This created a lot of pinched fingers and ripped paper. However, Trapper Keeper featured a plastic slider with plastic rings, which definitely helped out fingers. The original Trapper Keeper contained 3 of the previously mentioned Trapper folders with a clip in the back and some paper to use as a notepad. And best of all was the flap that folded over to close it with a metal snap. Mead wanted to get some real-world feedback before mass-producing the Trapper Keeper, so they made a commercial that aired in Wichita, Kansas in 1978. After the commercial, the Trapper Keeper, much to the surprise and happiness of Mr. Crutchfield, quickly sold out. Inside of each of these test Trapper Keepers was a comment card, and if the child that owned it filled it out and mailed it back to the Mead Company, they would send them a free notebook. And wouldn't you know, they didn't quite expect the response they got, receiving approximately 1,500 replies. But they found out that while kids did love them, so did adults.
I figure there are basically 2 kinds of people. Those who can't get it together, and those who can.
So in 1981, the Trapper Keeper was redesigned and the snap closure was changed to a Velcro strap. Mead then developed a media campaign to introduce the Trapper Keeper nationally, and it was a huge success. Upon release, you were able to get the Trapper Keeper in one of 3 specific designs: soccer, dog and cat, or the Oregon Coast, and the inside Trapper folders were red, blue, and green. While kids loved the ease and coolness of the Velcro, teachers were less than thrilled when they had 10 or more students opening their Trapper Keepers multiple times in class.
Oh, it was great for us kids!
From 1988 through 1995, Trapper Keepers began the Designer Series, which had themes such as video games, cartoon figures, space designs, sports, animals, cars, geometric shapes, and neon colors. 'Cause you know what? That's how we rolled in the 80s, and it's still awesome. These themes also had the added benefit of allowing students to express themselves in a positive way. As with a lot of things from the 1980s, there began to be some problems. One major issue for schools was that the Trapper Keeper was larger than a regular 3-ring binder, and many schools decided it was too big to allow it in the school. The size was an issue because school lockers were getting smaller, and with books, coats, and papers already inside, the Trapper Keeper simply wouldn't fit. Also, teachers had been complaining about the Velcro issue for a while, noting that it was a huge disruption in class. In an answer to that, Mead started to produce Trapper Keepers with a plastic snap. The other complaint teachers had was because the Trapper Keeper had multiplication tables and conversion tables, which would technically allow kids to cheat. Now you gotta remember, folks, this was the 80s and 90s, so we didn't have Google and the internet readily available. Due to schools across the country beginning to ban trapper keepers in the 1990s, the sales began to drop, which caused Mead to quit making them in such a large supply. But Mead didn't give up on the trapper keeper, as they released some notebooks and folders called Futuro City that introduced futuristic cities and landscapes from 1996 through 1999. Trapper keepers have continued to be popular, and Mead has kept up with the times with various upgrades and added designs. Here in 2022, you are able to find newly designed trapper keepers in most stores with some really cool designs. Traditional metal clamps, 2 trapper keeper folders that are traditional folders and open on the side instead of the top. Inside the back has a metal clamp for the notepad, and the inside has a front plastic pouch with holes that you can see your papers that you put inside it. But even with all these new innovations, nothing beats the original trapper keeper. Luckily, the introduction of the internet has made finding an original 1980s trapper keeper at a semi-reasonable price fairly easy. In fact, we bought ours online, and they're just as good at keeping our paperwork safe and organized now as they were back in the 80s and 90s when they were created. And with that, we've come to the end of this Macabre'Gorium Labs School of Boredom Quickie. I've been your host, Bats, and this has been Trapper Keeper. Organizing can be fun. If you enjoyed this video, please click like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our weird, creepy, odd, strange, or eccentric content as soon as we get it out. As usual, think for yourselves, be excellent to each other, and keep it creepy. Hey, thanks for checking out our video. If you enjoyed this one and would like to see more of our weird, creepy, odd, eccentric, or strange content as soon as it comes out, please feel free to click like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more. We'll see you later. Keep it creepy.